Hey, Vanessa. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited.
Me too.
Okay, good. I'm like, I feel so much more prepared this time around. It's a wonderful feeling. Okay, I guess we can let everybody in now.
Can I admit everybody now?
Great, yes.
Can you, did you make me a co-host already?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right, great.
Hi, Miss Sue.
Hi, guys. Thanks for coming. I'm very glad you're here.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Hi. Hi there, Gabe. I think you woke my dogs up. They were sleeping just a minute ago. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hi, Miss Sue. Hi, Miss Candy. Thanks for coming. I was wondering.
Hi, Miss Sue.
Who's that? Who said that?
Me.
Who's saying me?
Sue. I'm Sue.
Oh, hello. Hello. Hi. Is that
Hi,
Carrie?
Miss Sue.
Hi, Carrie. Who said?
Sue.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Someone said hi to me earlier, and I don't know who it was. Was it you, Vera? Was it you that said
Miss
hello?
Sue. Look what I made with pasta.
You made pasta by yourself? Oh.
Dinosaur bone.
Okay, pasta art. Pasta art. Making pasta art and making pasta are two very different things, aren't they?
Hi, Miss Sue.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Wait, who just said hello?
Hello.
Who was?
Me.
Who's saying me? I'm sorry. I'm looking for
Sarah. Hello.
Vera. Hello, Vera. Look who it is. Look, I have even Noel here.
Hello.
They want to have a cuddle during the story. You know what? You know what? Guess what, guys? Guess what? My mom is here. I see her name. My own mother. Yes.
Really?
Her name is Ruth. I know that must be her.
What's her name?
Yes, yes.
I also have a pet. It's a parrot. It's here on my ceiling. It's not a parrot. Wilbur is a parrot. It's you. Where your mom?
You have a pet parrot. Somebody has a pet parrot. Pet parrot, and it's named. I didn't hear it clearly.
What's your mom's name?
Her name is Ruth. I think she's still here.
Can you spotlight her so we can see her?
Spotlight her. Hey, mom, if you can hear me, do you agree to be spotlighted? Can I show them where you are? Will you say hello?
Hello, Miss.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Okay,
Hi, Miss Sue.
hi, Elizabeth dear. I can always recognize your voice. All right, we'll give just a few more minutes as our friends come and join.
Yes.
But I'm very, very glad you're here.
Hello.
I think that you might enjoy this story just as much as you enjoyed Charlotte's Web. If you did enjoy it.
Yeah. It starts little.
Monsieur, I pressed on the wrong button and I logged out.
Oh, okay.
And now I am
But you're
back.
back now, right? You can hear me, right?
Yes, I
Today
can.
Paul and Grace won't be with me, and I don't think they will be joining until I get home.
Monsieur,
Yes.
guess what?
It's the first. Sorry, Elizabeth. I'm very sorry. Paul and Grace can't join, but maybe they can join later. Here,
It's the story about
what were you saying?
Monsieur, what
Yes. Yes, Jenny.
I said is, guess what? I am going to make something for you that is going to make you surprised or amazed.
Okay, I didn't hear you clearly, Jenny. Sorry. Let's talk about it later. It's hard to hear because there's a lot of people.
I think I can send you a message.
Okay, sure. All right, friends, just so you know, if you want to ask your mom and dad to scan this code, later, if you missed one of the story times, you can get the video of the story time, okay? So tell your parent right now, if they want to come scan in, then I can send you the video of the story and then you can get it, okay?
Okay.
You can tell mom and dad right now that this is the one to scan if you want to have the recording.
Wait, I'm scanning. They're not chocolate red. I know this. Wait, I think the character is pretty familiar. This is my room. 当我错过了一个，可以看回放，也可以给弟弟妹妹看回放。No, yeah, sorry. No. This is my new room.
Who has a new room? Who is it?
Me.
Who's saying me? I'm looking for you.
Vera.
It's Vera. You have a new room? Are you sleeping in the schoolroom now? That's awesome.
Sue,
You're very lucky. It's a big window. All right, friends. I think
Sue, did you receive my message? Did you receive my message in Zoom?
let's see here. Oh, Jenny, thank you. You're gonna make me something that's very nice. I love it.
Miss Sue. Did you see my message? Miss Sue, did you see my message?
Yes, I got your message too, Vera. Thank you so much. All right, friends, I think it's time for me to mute everybody. Thank you so much for coming. But now I need to share with you about the story, and I'll have to just let you be quiet for now and be listeners. That way everyone can hear me clearly. Okay, now we are going to be reading a story called Stuart Little. And something that's very interesting about this story is that the man who wrote this book, he is the same man who wrote Charlotte's Web. The person who writes the book, that's called the author. The author, that means the person who wrote the book. Okay, so the author of Charlotte's Web is the same person as the author of Stuart Little. And so I bet that you will think about Charlotte's Web when you read this book, because it's also animals. And maybe there's some funny and nice things that you will think about as being very similar to the things we heard before. Now, here is a picture of the man who is the author. His name is E.B. White. That's what it says on the book. But his full name is Elwyn Brooks White. And he is from my country. He's from America, but he's from a place called New York. Okay, now the book that he wrote first, his very first book, and he wrote 3 very famous books and a lot of other things in his life, but his very first book was Stuart Little, okay? And I want to tell you something else very interesting about him. This is a picture of his wife, and her name is Catherine. Now, a lot of you know Miss Cat at our school, and we call her Cat, but her full name is Catherine. That's the same name as E.B.'s wife. And when she found out something very exciting, okay, so they love each other, they got married, and then she was going to have a baby. And she told her husband, I'm going to have a baby. And he wanted to figure out a special way to say, I'm so happy for you, and I'm so excited about our new baby that's coming. But he did something very interesting. Guess what this man did? He wrote a letter to his wife, and it was a letter from Daisy. I just put a circle around Daisy. Daisy is a dog. Well, Daisy obviously cannot write a letter, but this is the dog that he shared with his wife that he loved, and he thought it would be very interesting to send her a letter written by her dog. And you know what the dog was saying? The dog was saying, you know what? Your husband, he's very excited about you gonna have a baby. And it was a very sweet and special way to tell her, I love you and I'm very excited about this. And he thought of a funny, cute way to say it, being from their dog, a letter from their dog. I hope you understand what I mean. But even in this time, his idea was kind of funny and special. He wanted to write he wanted to write something that was like an animal was talking. And remember in Charlotte's Web how the animals were talking and having thoughts and feelings? That's the sort of interesting things that he likes to write about and think about. And as you can see, he loves dogs. He has a dog here in his arms in the picture. He had another dog later in his life with his wife. And you guys know I love dogs. I have 2 dogs. So I thought this was very, very special. And I never heard of that before. A man wants to send a letter to his wife and he has an idea to write a letter being from their dog. It's silly, but it's also very sweet, I think. Okay, so that's just something special about him. And you know what? The person who writes a book that you read is very important because that person, their mind and their thoughts are always in their stories. So we can understand that he loves animals. And then when we read his books, we can also see, yep, it's true. He loves animals. Now, when Mr. White wrote this book, Stuart Little, let me tell you something interesting. He was on a train the first time he had the idea. So one day he was on a train and he liked to ride the train. This was about 77 years ago. Okay, that's kind of a long time. 77 years ago, he was on a train and he likes to sleep on a train because you know what? When you sleep on a train, you bump around and your head shakes around, and he didn't mind. Many people would mind, but he didn't mind. And actually, he fell asleep on the train and he had a dream. He had a dream about a little boy who liked to act like a mouse. And he was almost like a mouse. The little boy was like a mouse. And that was the time he got an idea to write a special story. The story was for his niece. Niece is, you see, it means the little girl that belongs to your brother or your sister. So, for example, there's a little girl who called him Uncle E.B. White, right? He is her uncle, and then she's the niece. And it just means that they're family. And so he wanted to write a story for this little girl who is his niece and he's her uncle. And he decided to write her a story called Stuart Little. He wrote this for her. But you know what? It took him a long time to write it, and she grew up. She grew up before he even gave it to her. He wrote the story for her, but he didn't finish it until she was a grown-up girl. And so many children read this story now and they enjoy it, but the one little girl and the one little child that was gonna be the one that the story was for, she didn't get to read it when she was a little girl. She read it when she was older. Isn't that funny? But we get to enjoy it. He wrote this for her at the beginning when she was 6 years old. I wonder how many of you are 6 years old. If you're 6 years old, will you raise your hand? I just want to see. Can you give me like a thumbs up or raise hand? I want to see how many 6-year-olds we have. Any? Some of you are 5, some of you are 4, some of you are even older than that. Some of you are adults. Well, the good thing is it's a story for everybody, but it was written for a 6-year-old girl who is the niece of E.B. White. Isn't that interesting? Okay, now, as we start the story, I hope that maybe you think about somebody you could write a story for because you love them. We love our families, don't we? And for me, I want to write stories for my nieces and I want to share stories with my family. But I bet there's somebody you could share a story with. And E.B. White did that. And now we get to enjoy his work. And for 77 years, people have been reading Stuart Little, and they even made it a movie. Some of you have probably seen the movie. Okay, I talk so much about the story. It's time to read, okay? This is going to be shorter than Charlotte's Web, but we're going to take it nice and slow, and I want you to learn a lot of things, okay? Stuart Little, chapter 1. In the drain. When Mrs. Frederick C. Little's second son arrived, everybody noticed that he was not much bigger than a mouse. The truth of the matter was, the baby looked like a mouse in every way. He was only about 2 inches high. Let me show you. This is about 2 inches. So can you imagine a little baby that looks like this, 2 inches high? He was only about 2 inches high, and he had a mouse's sharp nose, and a mouse's tail, and a mouse's whiskers, and the pleasant, shy manner of a mouse. Before he was many days old, he was not only looking like a mouse, but acting like one too, wearing a gray hat and carrying a small cane. You see here in the picture, let me show you his gray hat in case it's too small for you to see. Here's the gray hat. And then here's his small cane. The cane is what he uses to walk. It's just being proper. He doesn't really need the cane. It's just something cool. Mr. and Mrs. Little named him Stuart, and Mr. Little made him a tiny bed out of 4 clothespins and a cigarette box. Cigarettes are those things you see people smoking like this. When the smoke comes out of their mouth, it's not very good for you. But maybe you've seen a little box on the ground. I know we have a lot of them around Shanghai. The boxes that they keep those things in. It's very small. It's only like this big. And this was the bed for the mouse boy, for Stuart. His mother made him a bed out of a cigarette box and 4 clothespins, which you see the picture there. Unlike most babies, Stuart could walk as soon as he was born. When he was a week old, he could climb lamps by shinnying up the cord. Now, do you see this little thing I put here of the mouse climbing the cord? That's pretty difficult. And babies don't normally know how to crawl and climb. But for this boy, when he was a baby, just a couple weeks old, he could already climb. It's because he's a mouse. Mrs. Little saw right away that the infant clothes she had provided were unsuitable, and she set to work and made him a fine little blue worsted suit with patch pockets in which he could keep his handkerchief. Now let me show you. I have a handkerchief right here. Here's a handkerchief. This is a handkerchief. Maybe you've never even seen one of these before, but all it is a piece of cloth. And in the old times, you know what, men always used to keep these in their pockets, and women too. You know what it's for? Let me show you. It's for blowing your nose. Or, that wasn't real. I didn't really blow my nose. Or it's for this. When you cry and you need a little tissue. So when people didn't have like tissue, like we have Jarding, they just use a handkerchief. So this little mouse boy, he has a little handkerchief that he can put in his patch pocket on the jacket that his mother made him. And he also can put his money and his keys. I have my keys right here. Keys. Every morning before Stuart dressed, Mrs. Little went into his room and weighed him on a small scale, which was really meant for weighing letters. Now let me point that out here. Here's the picture of the scale. And this is a tiny machine. It's small. And when you mail something, you send a letter, if it's very heavy, 好重, it will be very expensive. 好贵. It's going to be more expensive if it's very heavy. And if it's very light, it will be very cheap. Well, the mother would put her little mouse son on the scale to see how much does he weigh. And guess what? At birth, Stuart could have been sent by first-class mail for 3 cents. 3 cents is nothing. Very, very, very cheap because he's so small. He weighs very little. but his parents preferred to keep him rather than send him away. And when, at the 8th of the month, he had gained only 1/3 of an ounce, his mother was so worried, she sent for the doctor. So, you know, when a baby is born, one of the things that they always say is, how much does the baby weigh? Actually, when a baby is born, everybody wants to know 3 things. What's the baby's name? And how much does the baby weigh? And how long is the baby? Sometimes people also ask, what time was the baby born? But for example, my friend, she just had a baby. Look, here he is. This is my friend's new baby. His name is Archie. Isn't he so cute? And you know what? She sent me a picture of Archie and she said, Archie is 7 pounds and 6 ounces. Why do I need to know? Well, because if the baby is a good weight, that means he's healthy. And that means that the mother can relax and say, oh, my baby is a very strong baby, healthy baby. He's going to be okay. Well, Stuart's mother was very worried about him because she put him on the scale and he weighs so little. So she called the doctor. The doctor was delighted with Stuart and said that it was very unusual for an American family to have a mouse. He took Stuart's temperature and found that it was 98.6. That's Fahrenheit, by the way, not Celsius. 98.6, which is normal for a mouse. Here's the thermometer here. Let me just show you. This is the thing that you would use. The old kind of way. You put it in your mouth, under your tongue, and you wait to see how much, what's the number, and you can know if you're healthy and if you have a fever. Now we use the ones where we put it on our head or we put it on our hand, but in the old time they always use one like that, like the stick. Well, there was no problem with his temperature, and the doctor said he's normal, he's fine. But the mother was so worried. He's so small. He's weighing nothing. The doctor also examined Stuart's chest and heart and looked into his ears solemnly with a flashlight. Now look here, I have a picture of a small mouse ear. And I bet some of you have had the experience of a doctor coming up to you and saying, okay, let me look into your ear. And then they shine it in, 看一看, 看一看, 没问题. They see if there's anything wrong with your ear or inside. I've had that before. And that's what the doctor did. He checked inside the ear. Not every doctor can look into a mouse's ear without laughing. Apparently, it would be very funny to look into a mouse's ear because can you imagine? It's so small. Just a teensy tiny little ear. Am I going to just go trying to look inside? Everything seemed to be all right, and Mrs. Little was pleased to get such a good report. Feed him up, the doctor said cheerfully as he left. Now that's always a very important thing, is for babies to have food, enough food. And every mother wants her baby to eat a lot and be healthier. So I'm not surprised by the doctor's advice. Okay, next page. The home of the little family was a pleasant place near a park in New York City. In the morning, the sun streamed in through the east windows, and the Littles were up early as a general rule. Stuart was a great help to his parents and to his older brother George because of his small size, and because he could do things that a mouse can do and was agreeable about doing them. Okay, so we know that Stuart has a mom and dad, and he has a big brother called George. One day, when Mrs. Little was washing out the bathtub after Mr. Little had taken a bath, she lost a ring off her finger and was horrified to discover that it had fallen down the drain. This is where it fell. This is the drain here. This hole, the hole where the water goes down. Miss Little was washing the bathtub and her ring fell off her finger and down the drain. Rings are very valuable. This is not good at all. What had I better do? She cried, trying to keep the tears back. If I were you, said George, I should bend a hairpin in the shape of a fishhook and tie it onto a string, and I should try to fish the ring out with it. Okay, I have right here a hairpin. This is my hairpin. And I know what a fishhook looks like, so let me try to bend it. Can you see my hairpin? I'm bending it, into a hook. Can you see? Okay, here, it's got a hook now. Can you see that? I've made it a hook. And then I can imagine that he meant they were supposed to just tie a string on it. Okay, so if you can imagine this idea, this is what her husband said. Her husband said, if you want to get your ring out of that drain, I suggest you have a pin with a hook, right? And then you just drop it down in and you try to pull the ring out. That's a pretty creative idea. So Mrs. Little found a piece of string and a hairpin, and for about a half hour she fished for the ring, which means she put it down into the drain and she tried to pull it up, with the string, but it was dark down the drain, and the hook always seemed to catch on something before she could get it down to where the ring was. There's usually a lot of mess in the drain, hair and all kinds of things. It's very difficult to get anything out. And you can't see because it's dark. That's what she was saying. What luck? Inquired Mr. Little, coming into the bathroom. No luck at all, said Mrs. Little. The ring is so far down, I can't fish it up. Why don't we send Stuart down after it? Suggested Mr. Little. How about it, Stuart? Would you like to try? Yes, I would, Stuart replied. But I think I'd better get into my old pants. I imagine it's wet down there. It's all of that, said George, who was a trifle annoyed that his hook idea hadn't worked. Oh, I just realized it wasn't the husband that suggested this, it was the brother. Brother's name is George. So George had said, use this idea with the hook. Can you see my hook? Try this, and it's not working. So Mr. Little says, let Stuart go down and try to get the ring out himself. But it's dirty down there, so he's going to change his pants. Huangkuzi. Now, the book told us that this family lives near a park in New York City. And so this is their little house. And this is New York. Okay, so let me just show you where we are. I believe we are somewhere, I hope this is correct. Somewhere down here in China, right? In Shanghai. It's somewhere in this area. I believe actually, I think I'm going down too far. Maybe it's like up here. Anyway, you all can see where China is on the map, can't you? And then it's a long way to New York, isn't it? When I actually flew to China, I flew from New York City initially. Interesting fact. But anyway, they live in a place called New York, which is in America, and they live in the city inside the state. So it's just where that red dot is, you can see. And then the park that I think that the book is talking about is a very famous park called Central Park in New York City. It's very big, and it's right in the middle of the city, and a lot of people like to go there. And so I can see why this family would like to live there, because they have a big place where they can go play and enjoy the trees and have a picnic and things like that. So here is the park near their house. Okay. Stuart slipped into his old pants and prepared to go down the drain after the ring. He decided to carry the string along with him, leaving one end in charge of his father. Okay, so Stuart takes the string, and the other end he gives to his dad. And he said, Dad, you hold this side, and I'm going to take this part. And when I go down, then I'm going to jerk the string 1, 2, 3, pull it 3 times. And when I do that, that means I want you to pull me back up, because it will be very hard for Stuart to climb. So he just said, Dad, when I pull the string 3 times, pull me back up. And while Mr. Little knelt in the tub, Stuart slid easily down the drain and was lost to view, which means they couldn't see him anymore. In a minute or so, there came 3 quick jerks like this. 1, 2, 3 on the string, and Mr. Little carefully hauled it up. So he's pulling it slowly and gently because remember, his son is on the other side. There, at the end, was Stuart, with the ring safely around his neck. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Okay, I actually have a ring right over my counter. Let me grab it. Okay. This is one of my rings that I it's a play ring. So anyway, it's not valuable like the mother's ring in the story, but it would fit on my thumb. It's kind of big one. It will fit on my thumb. Look at how small that is. Can you imagine me trying to put this around my neck? Can you imagine? It would never work. My neck is huge. I can't put this around my head, but Stuart's head is so small as a mouse. He can just slip that right over his head and wear it as a necklace. Amazing. Certainly interesting things you can do if you're a mouse, wouldn't you say? Oh, my brave little son, said Mrs. Little proudly, as she kissed Stuart and thanked him. How was it down there? Asked Mr. Little, who was always curious to know about the places he had never been to. It was all right, said Stuart. But the truth was that the drain had made him very slimy and that it was necessary for him to take a bath and sprinkle himself with a bit of his mother's violet water before he felt himself again. He was probably feeling dirty and stinky. Everybody in the family thought that he had been awfully good about the whole thing. So he's so helpful. You know, as the only member of the family who's a mouse, there's actually ways that he can really help. So great. All right, this is chapter 2. It's called Home Problems. Stuart was also helpful when it came to ping pong. The Littles liked ping pong, but the balls had a way of rolling under chairs, sofas, and radiators, and this meant that the players were forever stooping down and reaching under things. Stuart soon learned to chase these balls. And it was a great sight to see him come out from under the radiator, pushing a ping pong ball with all his might. The perspiration rolling down his cheeks, which means he was like sweating from the hard work of pushing the ping pong ball. The ball, of course, was almost as high as he was, and he had to throw his whole weight against it in order to keep it rolling. Now, just look at this picture here. Look how small a ping pong ball is in a person's hand. Here's the small ping pong ball. And then look how big it is for for Stuart. He's working very hard to push that ping pong ball. I bet some of you have played ping pong before. I know people in China love ping pong. It's very fun. The Littles had a grand piano in their living room, which was all right, except that one of the keys was a sticky key and didn't work properly. Mrs. Little said she thought it must be the damp weather, but I don't see how it could be the damp weather, for the key had been sticking for about 4 years, during which time there had been many bright, clear days. But anyway, the key stuck and was a great inconvenience to anyone playing the piano. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but when you play piano, sometimes when you press down, it doesn't go down well. When you press it down, it needs to come back up, the keys, but sometimes you press it and then it sticks and the sound sounds very bad. And that was the problem they were having. It bothered George, particularly when he was playing the scarf dance, which was rather lively. Okay, now George, Stuart's big brother, likes to play piano, and he plays a song called Scarf Dance. Now I want you to hear Scarf Dance. Okay, let's just hear a little bit of piano music right now. That's called Scarf Dance. It's lively, which means it should be exciting and it should be kind of fast. Okay, let's just enjoy. Scarf Dance. That was great. That woman did a great job. And that is a lively song, isn't it? So that is the song that Stuart's brother George can play on piano. Wow, he's great. He's a very good piano player. But, you know, because of the problem with the key that was sticking. And so he didn't enjoy playing that song because it was always having a problem. Well, this is very interesting what Stuart is able to do to help because Stuart is so little. Okay, let me make this full screen here. It was George who had the idea of stationing Stuart inside the piano to push the key up the second it was played. This was no easy job for Stuart, as he had to crouch down between the felt hammers so that he wouldn't get hit on the head. But Stuart liked it just the same. It was exciting inside the piano, dodging about, and the noise was quite terrific. Okay, so here's a picture. You see, when inside the piano, when you press the key down, the hammer goes down, okay? Maybe you know this if you play piano. But then if you don't want the key to stick, you need to push it back up from the inside. And Stuart is able to do that. But it's very loud inside the piano. Now, I just want you to learn about this really quickly. So let me show you a video, just a very short video, of what it looks like inside the piano when you play a note. And so you can see what I mean about the hammer inside the piano that Stuart was able to push with his hands. Okay, here we go. You see those little things moving? See those, the things that are hitting inside? That's what makes the sound. I know Olivia already knows this because she plays piano. Well, it's just interesting to see that if you didn't know that before, because if you never played piano or looked inside, you won't know. But Stuart's able to help his brother play this song because he can actually get inside the piano and push the keys up so they won't stick. It's very helpful. Sometimes after a long session, he would emerge quite deaf, which means he couldn't hear. You know, sometimes when you hear something very loud, then you feel like, I can't hear anymore. As though he had just stepped out of an airplane after a long journey. And it would be a little time before he felt normal again. Mr. and Mrs. Little often discussed Stuart quietly between themselves when he wasn't around, for they had never quite recovered from the shock and surprise of having a mouse in the family. He was so very tiny, and he presented so many problems to his parents. So the mom and dad, they're whispering, they're talking about, oh my goodness, we have a son that's a mouse. This is so strange, and we don't know what to do. Mr. Little said that for one thing, there must be no references to mice in their conversation. He made Mrs. Little tear from the nursery songbook the page about 3 blind mice see how they run. Okay, so you know what he's talking about? He's talking about how in their family, they shouldn't say rude things about mice, because if they do, then their son, who is a mouse, is going to have his feelings hurt, you see. So there's actually a book that's very famous, and it's called the 3 Blind Mice book. Can you see this here? And I'm going to read you the book right now because it's so famous that you can find it for free on the internet. Okay, so this is the book that they had in their house, but then they decided to throw it away because they had a son that was a mouse. Okay, I hope you can see here. Here's the song. It's a song, actually. There's a song, but then there's also a story. It goes like this. 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. See how they run, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a thing in your life as 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice. See how they run, and like this. Okay, but it's not an interesting story because the mice get injured. Okay, this is the story. 3 blind mice. Okay, I don't know who keeps requesting control of the screen, but please don't request it anymore. Here we go. All right, here we go. 3 small mice, 3 small mice. Pine for some fun, pine for some fun, pine for some fun. They made up their minds to set out to roam. They said, 'tis dull to remain at home, which means boring to be at home, maybe how we feel right now. And all the luggage they took was a comb for brushing hair. These 3 small mice. 3 bold mice came to an inn. Good evening, host. Can you give us a bed? But the host, he grinned and shook his head. So they all slept out in a field instead, these 3 bold mice. 3 cold mice. 3 cold mice woke up next morn. They each had a cold and a swollen face through sleeping all night in an open space. So they rose quite early and left the place, these 3 cold mice. 3 hungry mice searched for some food, but all they found was a walnut shell that lay by the side of a dried up well. Who had eaten the nut they could not tell, these 3 hungry mice. 3 starved mice came to a farm. The farmer was eating some bread and some cheese, so they all went down on their hands and knees and squeaked, "Pray, give us a morsel, please," these 3 starved mice. 3 glad mice ate all they could. They felt so happy they danced with glee, but the farmer's wife came in to see what might this merrymaking be of 3 glad mice. Oh no, she's not happy. 3 poor mice soon changed their tone. The farmer's wife said, "What are you at? And why are you capering round like that? Just wait a minute, I'll fetch the cat." Oh dear, poor mice. 3 scared mice ran for their lives. They jumped out onto the window ledge. The mention of cat set their teeth on edge. So they hid themselves in the bramble hedge, these 3 scared mice. 3 sad mice, what could they do? The bramble hedge was most unkind. It scratched their eyes and made them blind. Now they can't see. And soon each mouse was out of his mind. These 3 sad mice, 3 blind mice, see how they run. They all ran after the farmer's wife, who cut off their tails with a carving knife. Did you ever see such a sight in your life as 3 blind mice? Oh, look, this is the part that the parents were talking about. The woman comes with a knife and cuts off their tails. That's horrible. 3 sick mice gave way to tears. They could not see and they had no end. They sought a chemist and found a friend. He gave them some never too late to mend, these 3 sick mice. 3 wise mice rubbed away. And soon their tails begin to grow. And their eyes recovered their sight, you know. They looked in the glass and it told them so, these 3 wise mice. 3 proud mice soon settled down. The name of their house I cannot tell, but they've learned to trade and are doing well. If you call upon them, ring the bell 3 times twice. And that's the end of the story. So this is the end of that story. This is a very famous book, and they had this book at their house for their children, but they did not obviously want their son Stuart to be reading something like this because it would make him afraid, reading about the experiences of people that look like him, having these long tails getting chopped off by a crazy woman with a knife, and then having the cat come after them too. So they threw the book away. "Yes," replied Mrs. Little, "and I think we had better start thinking about the poem. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. I think it might embarrass Stuart to hear mice mentioned in a belittling manner." You see, this is from a famous poem. I have it right here. "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. It's a Christmas poem, but mice are mentioned." And they said, "Oh no, we can't talk about this with our son because it's going to make him feel bad about being a mouse." "That's right," said her husband. "What shall we say when we come to that line in the poem? We'll have to say something. We can't just say 'twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring. That doesn't sound complete. It needs a word to rhyme with house." "What about louse?" asked Mrs. Little. "Or grouse," suggested Mr. Little. "I suggest souse," remarked George, who had been listening to the conversation from across the room. It was decided that louse was the best substitute for mouse. And a louse means a little disgusting bug that gets in your hair. It's disgusting. And so when Christmas came around, Mrs. Little carefully rubbed out the word mouse from the poem and wrote in the word louse. And Stuart always thought that the poem went this way. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a louse. The thing that worried Mr. Little most was the mouse hole in the pantry. Now, a pantry is where you keep your food in the kitchen, and there's a hole here. See, I have a picture of it. This hole had been made by some mouse in the days before the Littles came to live in the house, and nothing had been done about stopping it up. Mr. Little was not at all sure he understood Stuart's real feeling about a mouse hole. He didn't know where the hole led to, but it made him uneasy to think that Stuart might someday feel the desire to venture into it. After all, he does look a good deal like a mouse, said Mr. Little to his wife, and I've never seen a mouse yet that didn't like to go into a hole. Okay, and you know how these holes come, don't you? Mouse holes are created when mice use their sharp teeth to gnaw through wood. You see, I have a, whoops, that was a mistake. I have a picture here. I have a picture here of the mouse teeth, and they can bite and gnaw through wood. And so some mouse a long time ago had made a tunnel and made a hole, and now the family is worried that their son Stuart might get curious and decide to check it out. But of course they don't want him to, because they don't think it's safe, and they decide we should get rid of the hole. Just cover it. Don't let don't let Stuart think about going in there. Makes sense. Okay, the third chapter, washing up. This is quite interesting, I think. Stuart was an early riser, which means he likes to get up early. He was almost always the first person in the morning. He liked the feeling of being the first one stirring. He enjoyed the quiet rooms with the books standing still on the shelves, the pale light coming in through the windows, the fresh smell of day. In the wintertime, it would be quite dark when he climbed from his bed out of the cigarette box, and he sometimes shivered with cold as he stood in his nightgown doing exercises. Stuart touched his toes 10 times every morning to keep himself in good condition. He had seen his brother George do it. You see, here's a picture of George touching his toes. And George had explained that it kept the stomach muscles firm, and it was a fine abdominal thing to do. After exercising, Stuart would slip on his handsome wool wrapper, which was like a robe, and tie the cord tightly around his waist and start for the bathroom. Creeping silently through the long, dark hall past his mother's and father's room, past the hall closet where the carpet sweeper was kept, past George's room, and along the head of the stairs till he got to the bathroom. Of course, the bathroom would be dark, too, but Stuart's father had thoughtfully tied a long string to a pull chain of the light. The string reached clean to the floor. By grasping it as high as he could and throwing his whole weight on it, Stuart was able to turn on the light, swinging on the string this way with his long bathrobe trailing around his ankles. He looked like a little old friar pulling the bell rope in Abbey. To get to his wash basin, Stuart had to climb a tiny rope ladder, which his father had fixed for him. George had promised to build Stuart a small wash bin, which only 1 inch high, with a little rubber tube through which the water would flow. But George was always saying that he was going to build something and then forgetting about it. Stuart just went ahead and climbed the rope ladder to the family wash bin every morning to wash his face and hands and brush his teeth. Mrs. Little had provided him with a doll-sized toothbrush, a doll-sized cake of soap, and a doll-sized washcloth, and a doll's comb, which he used for combing his whiskers. He carried these things in his bathrobe pocket, and when he reached to the top of the ladder, he took them out, laid them neatly in a row, set about the task of turning the water on. For such a small fellow, turning the water on was quite a problem. He discussed it with his father one day after making several unsuccessful attempts. I can get up to the faucet all right, he explained, but I can't seem to turn it on. Now, what he's talking about, friends, is this right here. This is the thing that you need to turn to make the water come on. So he can climb there, but he can't figure out how to turn it because his hands are so small, you see. Yes, I know, his father replied. That's the whole trouble. George, who always listened to conversations whenever he could, said that in his opinion, they ought to construct a brace for Stuart. And with that, he got out some boards, a saw, a hammer, a screwdriver, and a brad awl, and some nails. Started making a terrible fuss in the bathroom, building what he said was going to be a brace for Stuart. But soon he became interested in something else and disappeared, leaving the tools lying around all over the bathroom floor. Stuart, examining this mess, turned to his father again. Maybe I could pound the faucet with something that and turn it on that way. So you see, he has something in his hands here. So Stuart's father provided him with a very small, light hammer made of wood. And Stuart found that by swinging it 3 times around his head, like this, and letting it come down with a crash against the handle of the faucet, he could start a thin stream of water flowing, enough to brush his teeth. Anyway, and moisten his washcloth. So every morning after climbing up to the basin, he would seize the hammer and pound the faucet, and the other members of the household, dozing in their beds, would hear the bright, sharp plink, plink, plink of Stuart's hammer, like a faraway blacksmith, telling them that day had come, and Stuart was trying to brush his teeth. Sounds like Stuart's really figuring it out. He's figuring out how to live in this family despite being the only mouse. And guess what, friends? That is chapter 1, 2, and 3. Now, before I let you go, let me just remind you, if you didn't get to hear the full story tonight because you came late, or you think you might miss one of my story times in the future, you can scan this code and then I will share with you the link for the recording. Okay, so you can get the recording and listen to it later. If you want to listen to it again and see the pictures again, you can scan the code. Okay, that is the end of our story for tonight, and we will read 3 more chapters on Friday. Okay, so come back if you want to hear more, or you can join the group and I'll share them there. All right, thank you, friends. Have a good evening. Good night, everybody. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye. See you.